Irashaimase. Hello and welcome to Fataris' Kitchen. I'm your host, Chef Fataris. It's time once again for Shoot 'em Up Saturday, and on the menu this week we have Satryn DX, an arcadey twin stick. What kind of taste will it have? Let's get cooking and find out. From developer Maybell, Satryn DX originally released for the PC in 2021. Now in July of 2024, it's available on the Nintendo Switch, and that's the version we're looking at today. This is just a simple twin stick that's in the vein of classic arcade titles similar to Robotron. So if you like gameplay like that and are interested in games that are good for short arcadey-like runs at a price point that supports that, then this is one I'd recommend checking out. I've had a lot of fun with it, so if you like that kind of gameplay, you might as well. Finding ourselves at the main menu. So there's a fun manual to this game itself that has some lore as well as some interesting explanations of both the power-ups and the enemies themselves. Also some nice options which we'll look at in just a moment. But of course the main thing we're here for is starting the run. Doing so takes us to level 1. And right off the bat you can see this is a relatively straightforward twin stick shoot 'em up. You have your movement on your left stick and your fire on your right stick, or if using your Switch controller, you can also use the face buttons to direct that up, down, left, right, or press two of them to get your diagonals. So in this kind of a game, one of the most important elements is the scoring. So that is largely influenced by the friends that we're helping save. So these blue individuals that are currently wearing hats, there's actually an option to turn the hats on, and I think they're much cuter with them on, so that's what I'm running with. In the options here you can see you can turn off the hats. There's also some great photosensitivity options. I do appreciate when a developer has that in there. So we can turn off the hats, and that's the way the friends look without. I think they're so much cuter with those hats on though, so that's the way I've been playing it basically the entire time. But as we collect the friends, we're increasing our score multiplier. So the more friends we have, the more points we get for defeating the enemies, and that will ultimately lead to getting power-ups. As every 75,000 points we score, we're awarded power-ups, which will give us some certain shots. They do have limited time, or rather limited ammunition, but they are pretty effective at dealing with the hordes that are out to hurt our friends, like these nasty green scorpions. So I really do love the visual look of this game itself. All the vibrant colors, the splats of the enemies, and unfortunately the friends and yourself when they happen to be taken out by the enemies themselves. But one thing to go and note, some of the mob enemies are the color red, and those actually kind of blend in with the background when you have a lot of them. So this is our first power-up. This wave here has like a large triangular force that pushes enemies away, and then you're firing also forward and out to the side. So once you get to the point where you're starting to collect power-ups, sometimes those power-ups will start to come very, very quickly. You can get several power-ups per stage, but normally if you've scored enough points for a power-up, they'll oftentimes pop up when you start the next stage as well. So that's something that is a little bit different, but can really help with the run itself, as that's when you would most need the power-ups as well. So now we've got this power-up. This laser is piercing. It's great for taking out the weaker mobs. Bam. Another thing that can potentially happen, so if you look around the border of the screen, you see that we have all these octahedrons, those 8-sided triangle things looming over the border. And on some stages, those will actually awaken and become enemies in the stage itself. I've had runs where I've made it to level 30 without actually encountering those at all, and other runs where by this point I would have fought like a half dozen. So it's pretty random, and that's kind of describes the way that this game ultimately ends up feeling. Not necessarily in a bad way, as it makes each of your runs unique, but that is something that you should be prepared for. There was one other mechanic that I neglected to mention at this point. As you collect 60 friends total, you'll get a 1-up, and also when you lose a life, then our total number of friends is decreased by 35%. I do appreciate that the manual just straight out comes out and says that's the value you'll lose when you lose a life. And that is Satryn DX served up for your enjoyment. So as far as these aren't really like minus flavors, but there is that one problem with the red enemies kind of blending in with the background, especially when things get really manic and chaotic. It just kind of like lends itself to this style of gameplay, so depending, might not be such a bad thing, as it just increases the challenge. Here's one of those octahedron punks. But it is something to be aware that when things get pretty chaotic, you will be losing the enemies in the chaos. Then there's also the matter of the online leaderboard. So for the Switch, there isn't an online leaderboard directly on, like, in the game itself. Rather, you have to scan a QR code when you upload your score, and that QR code will take you to an online leaderboard where you can see your score compared to the others. I do appreciate that the game does have an online leaderboard, but it's a little bit cumbersome to have to download that and get to that itself. So just not really a minus flavor, but just like something to keep in mind. So there is an online leaderboard, but it does take a little bit of effort on your part to get to that. But as far as the plus flavor is concerned, I do just like the simple, straightforward gameplay that the game has. It just has a great arcadey pick-up-and-play feel to it that really serves it quite well. You know, just sit down, like bang out a couple runs of the game itself, and then move on to something else. And so, at the end of the day, given the price point especially, Satryn DX is a recommend from the chef. And with that, that brings us to the end of this week's episode of Shoot 'em Up Saturday. As always, I want to thank you so much for joining us this week. I hope you have a wonderful week yourself, and we look forward to seeing you again next time.